So this is the Losi short course truck 22. So this is a 22 SCT. This is actually a very good beginner truck in my opinion. There are things that I like. There are things that I dislike, and I'm going to cover them. And then after that, I'm going to talk about some of the other vehicles that are within the same range and what I think about them. So first and foremost, out of all the two-wheel drive short courses from the three major brands, this would be, Losi, Team Associated, and Traxxas. This is the least expensive, and I'm going to talk about prices and everything. The other thing too is sometimes these things go on sale, and then you can get a very good deal on them. They come with the transmitter batteries, but you still need a battery and charger for the actual truck, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. Now, the body's just a standard thickness, what I would say, short course truck. It's somewhat aggressive looking. Well, I'm not sure about the lights, but everything else, maybe just because it's so square. But if we look at the truck, now there are pluses and minuses for this truck compared to some of the other vehicles. If you've had a Traxxas vehicle, for example, you know the shafts are actually quite small. And the plastic caps will pop off, and then once you replace this with aluminum, then your shafts will bend. Now these shocks, one of the things that you can notice is the extra fiber on the shock bodies, so they're not plain plastic. Maybe you're going to upgrade them anyway, so it may not matter, but you can bleed them off the top, which is something very good. I do have a teardown video, so go ahead and watch it if you have not, or if you're interested. It's not exactly this truck. It's actually the Losi 22S drag car. It's the same thing. It's the same process. If you can build one, you can build the other. If you can disassemble one, you can disassemble the other. Transmissions are the same principle. Now, if we look at these shocks, let me go ahead and zero this. These are pretty thick. These are about 3.4, say 3.5 millimeters in thickness. The GTR shocks, which is really what you should get on a Traxxas Slash, those are about 3 millimeters, I want to say, if I recall correctly. So these are much thicker shafts. These are going to take larger jumps. Now there is an advantage to the Slash, and that's the RPM support. You can get all the RPM arms, the aluminum pieces, and you can really build a bulletproof vehicle with all the RPM parts. Although I'll be honest, I like the TrueTrack, the Proline kit. But if you look at these knuckles, these are much stronger than the Slash knuckles, if you're familiar with the Slash knuckles. Slash, the caster block goes over the knuckle, but it's very flexible plastic, so when you take a hit, it sort of opens up, the pin gets released from the top as it scrapes some of the material, and then it destroys the hub carrier or your steering knuckle. So that is something to keep in mind. This is, I want to say this is closer to a race type of materials, not quite, so it really isn't quite a race truck, but it's quite capable. So if you want a truck to bash and then maybe you want to do some off-road racing, this is something you can get. If you look at the suspension geometry, you have arms that are nice and long versus the Traxxas arm are a lot shorter for two reasons. One, the distance between the pins here on the bulkhead is much larger on the Slash, and the offset is also different on the Slash. There's a greater offset. Well, actually there's less of an offset because they're centered. This one has a greater offset because it's offset from the center. So that is something to keep in mind. The shocks are quite long, especially in the rear. So if let's see, I'm gonna try to go center to center. That's if I can, let's see, so I'll go bottom of this part of the screw to bottom of the other part of the screw, right in there. And that doesn't, let's see. I want to make sure I wasn't compressing the suspension. And I'm trying to get my head out of the camera as well. Nope, that didn't work. All right, let's try going top to top. Given this position, this will be the easiest. It's about 91.5, 91.6. And I was trying to keep this uncompressed. Now, keep in mind that We do have two positions here on the shock tower. I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but there's two holes on the top, so you can stand up the shocks a little more if you're going to be doing some high jumps. So if you look at these two holes right here, it's in the inner hole out of the box. You can go into the outer hole if you're going to be bashing. And then if we look at the arms, well, that one's not going to show, well, yeah, right here. There's also two positions, so there's an outer and an inner. Now, the general setup of this truck I like. The bumper, this thing can absorb impact like you wouldn't believe. The rear bumper, I mean, that thing is just cool with the little mud flaps, everything. I mean, this thing is definitely for show, but I love it. It's also very good at taking impacts, although it's somewhat high, so if something misses this bumper, it's just going to hit this. But this is actually quite resistant, so I wouldn't worry about any damage to the motor. Something else that I would recommend is take the motor, wash the motor. This is a brushed motor, so just wash the motor for maybe 5 minutes. Once the water's a little clear, it cleans up the brushes. It's not going to give you more top end speed, but it will give you more torque, so you're going to notice better response, better acceleration, which is nice. The rear shock tower, again, two positions that you get there, and then at the bottom, if I flip it, you can see there's two positions. So right now it's on the inner and outer. So there's an inner here and an outer there. You can switch the shock over if you're going to be taking some high jumps. The other thing that I do like is that the body mount is not on the shock tower, so it's separate. So this has a different function. So when you take an impact, let's just say you flip the vehicle, just like that, the impact is going to go on the body mounts. So this is very flexible, very springy, this also, but this is not on the shock tower, so the impact is going to be taken by these springs. So think of this as a spring, instead of it being directly into the shock tower when you're upside down. Now the electronics that come with it, very basic, simple, they're good for what they are. This is a throttle limit, so you can go from, this is actually a lot easier than Traxxas, and the reason why is in Traxxas you have to go into the ESC to do 50% power. Here, you simply just go 50, 75, and then 100. So if you're just learning or you're giving this to maybe a young kid, just go 50. Kid starts learning, go 75, then go 100. It's that simple, it's just on the transmitter. Throttle, you can reverse the throttle, you can reverse the steering, and then you have the trims. So for example, let's just say if you turn right, but this thing's turning left, I mean, just flip it. And that's something that may happen if you swap out the servo later on, or maybe the ESC. Let's just say you go into a higher end system, maybe a Hobby Wing or a Castle Creations, right? Nothing too crazy. And say the reverse, you can just reverse them on the transmitter rather than, for example, steering servo. Traxxas, if you've seen my videos on how to reverse steering or reverse throttle, it's a whole orchestrated circus on the transmitter to do all the programming. Here, you just toggle some buttons. So the transmitter is actually pretty nice, very user-friendly. Definitely for newbies, I would say this is probably the best way to go when it comes to the transmitter. But again, nothing wrong with Traxxas. Traxxas Slash is the vehicle I've purchased the most and gave away the most, or given away the most. Now, I'll be honest, the major downside of this truck is actually the battery compartment. The battery compartment is awful. I strongly dislike it. And if we look at this right here, battery goes in through the bottom, and it's made this way so you don't have to remove the body. So you have these things, you can take just a quarter, for example. I mean, these probably look familiar. You can take a quarter. Right now, this is brand new, so they're really smooth. If I showed you the old one, just use your old one for parts or give it away. It's generally the stuff I do. I just give your old stuff away and then get some new stuff. It's easier than just replacing a bunch of things that wear out. But these will start getting stuck, especially if you run and find dust, find sand. And then the battery goes in here. It's somewhat annoying. One of the things that you could do is just replace this whole thing with the aluminum chassis. Get the, for example, a Losi drag car. Just get that, replace this. It's nicer. The other thing too is that if you do that, your electronics are going to be sitting lower. Not that this is going to make much difference. If anything, this is going to make it cooler because it's going to want to shift weight. And that's the thing about these trucks. They're really just made to look cool when they're running. And these tires, I love the way they screech. They're awesome. Now, what could you do instead? Let's just say you don't want to get the chassis. Well, that's fine. Remove all of this. Just cut all this out right here from the top of the battery. Relocate the ESC. Just double stick tape it right over here. You're going to have to extend these wires. And get a TrueTech Velcro system. It has its self-adhesion. So just clean everything out in there with alcohol. Stick it on there, and then it has 2 Velcro straps that will hold the battery. That would be my recommendation. Now the rear shocks, you get a lot of length, a lot of travel, but when it's fully compressed, this thing will bottom out before the tires do. So a little recommendation, get some number 8 nylon washers and put them in here. You're probably going to need about 3 in the back, 3 in the front. And you need the number 8 because they're so much thicker. If you had regular slash shocks, for example, you'd probably be using a number 4. If you had the GTRs, you would use the number 6. These are much thicker, so you're going to be using a number 8. Here, I can go ahead and confirm that real quick. I forgot what the measurement was. It was about 3.635 or something. Yeah, okay, so 3.4. And for those of you that use inches, oops, that didn't work. Screwed that one up, didn't I? Let's see, 3.4. Well, I'm gonna go, that's approximately, so it should be mode. So inches, okay, 1365, so that's, it gives you, so point 13, almost 14 inches in diameter. So the nylon washer has to have at least that for the inner diameter. Which you may be able to do number 6, but I would just go with a number 8. Number 6 looks, well, here, let's see. I actually happen to have some right here. So these are some number 6 washers. Just make sure I'm zeroed. I'm also in inches. There we go. Yeah, number 6 will work actually. So just get some number 6s on all of them. And that'll sell. Well, I hope this was useful for choosing your vehicle. Again, this is a very nice vehicle, very inexpensive. You can find these, as of this video, they are $230 roughly. Sometimes you can find them on sale for about $200. I actually got this one on sale for under $200, which is why I would recommend it, because it's the least expensive option to get into RC. Especially if you're wondering if you're going to like it or not. Plus, it is actually a very nice vehicle. And if you run it on asphalt, you're going to love the way those tires sound. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one.
What? Oh, my hair! My arm! My rod!